Politicians for a long time have said that one of the signs of how healthy a city is going is just to have a look at the skyline and look at how many cranes are in the sky. It's something that is a sign of economic development. It's a sign of construction that is taking place everywhere. And it doesn't matter whether it is massive projects or slightly smaller ones. Construction is always a sign of a city that is getting bigger and better. In fact, the New South Wales government, in just a couple of months ago, decided to put this press release out where, among other things, they referred to the construction king being Sydney, a quote attributed to the Premier of New South Wales, Gladys Berejiklian. Well, what a difference a few weeks makes, because they've gone from being the king of construction to the absolute queens of shutdown. Right now, building sites empty. People having to plead to have their water reconnected if they are renovating their home right now, including people who live in areas of Greater Sydney with 0 COVID cases or 0 mystery cases. And we learned today that this was a bit of a captain's call. Despite the fact of the constant conversation about the health advice, it wasn't the health advice that decided to shut down all the cranes, all the jackhammers, and anyone with a hammer.
We provide the advice in terms of the broad principles of what we need to see. Clearly, we're not the experts in logistic chains and other things. As you'd expect, we are not the experts on some of those factors.
But with so many people really suffering right now, I repeat, people who cannot leave their local government area or cannot leave their house to go to work, people who are scared, who employ people who have been told they are not allowed to go to work. Let me give you a simple example. If you run a little lawn mowing business, lawn mowing is not allowed right now in New South Wales. But of course, council workers, they can continue to mow the lawns in the local football ovals, because follow the science. And despite the fact that right now, the New South Wales government's financial contribution to business is grossly inadequate. Remember, only today was the day where you could start to apply for a grant when it wasn't the same shutdown. It was a top-up payment. Businesses can't top up the top-up payment because they don't have any income coming in. And to qualify, by the way, for these payments, you have to promise that you won't sack anyone. You have to sign a series of legal documents that frighten normal people. But what did the press corps ask the dear leaders today? Instead, they were worried about the big issues, like the Sheila from Celebrity Big Brother and a bloke who's been taking the piss on TikTok.
It's heartbreaking, as you can see behind me. Like, chairs are up. It's what do you tell your staff?
It's really suffering. We've had to shut down. We've been moved outdoors, and then we moved outdoors.
At the beginning, we closed. It wasn't worth us to stay open.
JobKeeper was out. Things were in place. We can see that everyone was working towards the same goal. At the moment, we're not sure.
And it's mounting up, and the pressure is mounting. It's impacting people's livelihoods, their businesses, people's jobs, and quite honestly, their mental health.
That's what they should be asking about. Instead, they were asking this.
Picked the numbers 5 days straight, hasn't picked the numbers today. Have you found the obvious leak within government?
Could I ask about Katie Hopkins? She was obviously, the federal government has today said it was the New South Wales government that invited her in. Is that correct? That gave her the exemption?
I think the way the process...
Yeah, the Sheila from Channel 10 asking the big questions. There was just one question today at that press conference about the inadequate financial support for businesses that are on their knees and crying today. Just one.
I know you keep sticking to July 30. It's clear this is going longer. It seems to mean some form of lockdown. And it's clear that you've gone down harder than when the federal decision was made on the economic supports. Is it time for the return of something like lockdown JobKeeper?
No, I think what is really important for us to note is we're obviously working very hard to get out of this lockdown as soon as we can, but there's no doubt that everybody across Australia will need to live with some level of restriction until we get our vaccination rates higher. So the challenge for all governments, and at the moment the most challenging for my government and for the people of this state, is to work out how we can best live safely and freely until at least the end of October, when those vaccination rates are much higher.
One question, no answer. This is the single biggest bushfire that is happening emotionally right now in New South Wales. Very close behind it are the kids who can't go to school, and you know how I feel about that. But small business needs help. They need pressure put on government by those that are at that press conference to ask them not about, should the federal government put a new scheme in place, what is the New South Wales government doing? I repeat, they have told every truck driver, every delivery van operator, everyone with a hammer, every hairdresser, everyone has to stay home. And if you are lucky enough to be an employee, you're able to apply to the federal government. But if you're the boss, the best you're going to get is $10,000. But that is for the businesses who have turnover of millions of dollars. It's not good enough. It needs to change, and it needs to change tomorrow.